Hello and welcome to another episode of Pull Yourself to Pieces, the podcast.
That's right. We're here.
We are here. We made it, and nothing
That's right.
could keep us away, not even wild horses.
That's right. Really?
Anyway, today on the show, Bill, we have a very special guest.
Oh, thank you, Ray.
Not you. Not
sorry.
you.
All right. Okay.
No.
What? We got a guest.
We have a very special guest. Yes, someone
Living
I
and
wanted
breathing
to-
this time.
Yes, a live guest.
my God.
Yes, this is true.
All right.
Instead of dead celebrities that pop up every now and then, if you listen to the show.
Right.
This person is extremely fascinating. He's had so far still a fascinating life, and I've wanted to chat with him for the longest time. We finally coaxed him onto this show. If you are a Twitter follower or fan, you'll know him as Tim the Enchanter.
Oh, yes. I've seen him. Yes.
Yes, and which I just happen to love that name because I think of that scene from Monty Python with John
Right.
Cleese,
Yes.
Cleese with the horns on his head.
Right.
It's hysterical right off the bat.
Yeah.
So we all know and love Tim the Enchanter. Have a big warm welcome for Tim.
All right. Woo.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I took that Twitter handle because my name is Tim. And
No disguise in there.
I thought long and hard about it. It was at or Tiny Tim, which plagued me throughout my childhood. So,
Really? Really interesting.
I hated that guy. It was everybody, it's Tiny Tim.
Oh, yeah.
I was like him.
I think we just all put up with it, but yeah, who really liked him? It's a good point.
Yeah, nobody.
Well,
Nobody.
he's the star of that story. How could you not like little Tiny Tim?
No. Not that Tiny Tim.
Tiny Tim, Ray.
The singer.
With the ukulele.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the singer.
Big difference.
Nobody knows about the Industrial Revolution, Tiny Tim. Yeah.
No, apparently not. No. Okay, my bad.
So anyway, yeah. So Tim the Enchanter, and I'm a big Monty Python fan, like everybody else in the world.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's why I took the name.
Cool. I've read a good amount of your tweets, and you and I, Tim, we have like a similar background. I came from a mother who was physically abusive and a father who looked the other way and only cared about basically our mother and horse racing. And I know you've made some comments about your upbringing. Care to share some of the less finer points?
Yeah, I won't go into the ugly details, but I was born in 1955. My mom was 16 and my dad was 18. It was their third date. And they didn't get along, but in the 50s, you by God got married if you were pregnant. And
Yep.
Wow.
So they were married for I want to say 2.5 years. He was very violent towards her. So then she remarried and he remarried. And
Who did you end up with?
Well, at first I ended up with my dad and stepmom because my mom moved to California. Her second husband was this kind of famous architect dude, and they lived in a fancy house in California. And the judge here in Oregon, where I'm from, decided that my dad, the abusive farmer, would be a better dad for me. So we lived on a
Way to
farm.
go, Judge. Wow.
Yeah, he was brilliant.
No. Jeez.
My dad's second wife was a Jehovah's Witness, very big time Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
And so my dad became a Jehovah's Witness too, and common dinner table conversation was about how I was personally sent by Satan into the family to ensure that they don't live through the end of the world, stuff like this.
Yeah,
Really?
dinner
They
bonding.
singled you out as the interloper?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, completely. It was like common. It was just daily. And he was very, very physically abusive, as was my stepmom. So When
Oh,
I
good.
was 12, I ran away. And by this time, my mom and stepfather had moved from California to New York City. So I hitchhiked my ass to New York City.
All right, stop
Um,
right there. Stop right there. So, okay, because you just don't go. I hitchhiked to New York City from Oregon without
yeah,
At 12 years
and
old.
how at 12 years old. Is this
yeah,
correct? 12 years old.
Wow.
yeah,
Okay, so you grew up very quickly. You became a man fast
Hell
because
yeah.
very
to
fast.
hitchhike
Yes.
to hitchhike across this country from one
Yeah.
coast to the next. That's a feat in itself.
Well, and it
So
was
what?
it was less unusual in the '60s than it is now.
Sure,
But you're
but
right.
it's still kind of dangerous.
Absolutely, could have been
Yeah.
bad. I was lucky. I had like 3 rides the whole way.
Wow. Oh
Um,
my
Wow.
gosh, that is awesome.
yeah, one
Yeah.
of them was a truck driver who had one 8-track cassette tape. He had one.
And what was it that you had to listen to for 25 hours?
Yeah, it was Buck
What?
Owens and the Buckaroos.
Oh, kill me now.
I've got a tiger by the tail. That was one of his big hits. So over and over
Yeah.
we heard, you
Yeah.
know, um,
Right.
but he was a nice enough guy. He bought me hamburger and stuff. And
Yeah.
so I got to New York,
Wow.
where then a judge. So my dad went to court in Oregon and they asked New York court to send me back. New York court was like, excuse me, but we got junkies younger than this guy. You got to be kidding me.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what did
Yeah.
he ran away so he'd go live with his mom. So what,
Right.
So
Yeah.
they let me stay.
Wow.
So, which was a good and a bad thing. My mom and stepdad were what you call Goldwater Republicans.
Oops.
They were atheists. This was before, the religious right had really infiltrated the Republican
Sure.
Party.
Sure.
So, and they were into the Vietnam War. They thought those dirty Vietnamese deserved it, and they were into big business. Basically, the Republican Party used to be out front big business in those days,
Right.
and very little, sort of morality to it. Anyway,
Right.
so they were both severe alcoholics. And my stepdad was this rich and famous architect, like I said. And he
Yeah.
was like your dad, Ray. He would sit and watch. He was just, I would be being abused and mistreated, and he was just in a drunken stupor and staring off into the abyss,
Oh boy.
So
Sorry.
anyway, so by the time I was 14, my mom threw me out. So I was homeless. I was living on the streets of New York.
Manhattan.
Manhattan, yeah. St. Mark's
Manhattan.
Place, yeah,
Right. So now you're 14 and you are
Right.
living on the streets of New York.
that's right. Yep,
that-
69? 1969.
69, yeah.
Wow. Man.
Oh, so yeah, you
Is that
you
right?
were
Yeah.
you were a real life midnight cowboy happening right there, then, weren't you?
Yeah. Yep, that's right. But
Wow.
luckily, there was a lot of other kids on the street, with similar stories. So it wasn't all that uncommon. I
Sure.
got treated pretty badly several times along the way. But anyway, I also learned a lot of things. I learned how to grow up pretty quickly.
I bet. Yeah.
And got into protesting against the Vietnam War. I was in the very first Women's Liberation March, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Gay rights marches.
That's another first. I mean, I can't say
Oh, yeah.
Well, he was in
Yeah.
a good place. Well, what I mean, New York
Yeah.
City. A lot of things
I
happening.
was there. Yeah, I was just there, and I was very, keyed in with the
Yeah.
movement, as we
Yeah.
used to say.
Sure.
So then 1972 comes along, and that's of course the next conventions for the Democrats and the Republicans. And that year, for some bizarre reason, they both decided to have them in the same city, in Miami Beach, in Florida. The Democrats, if I recall, were in July, and the Republicans were in August. So this was like a magnet for all the movement people. So I hitchhiked down there. There was thousands of people. We were all camped out in this park. Um, and
Wow.
I'm condensing this because it really is kind of a long story. But in Miami, that's where I met Tom. Tom Forsad was my partner in crime in many activities. After this, he was one of the founding organizers of a group called the Zippies. The Zippies were people who had rejected Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin and the Yippies, and also had much more of a sense of humor about what they were doing. Anyway, I met him and we just clicked. It was nothing sexual. It was just like, once in a while you meet somebody and you're like friends immediately.
I had one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen
Yeah.
often, but
Right.
it happens. So he, I worked with him. He and I, did lots of organizing down in Miami. And then when it was time to come back to New York, he was also living in New York. Him and his girlfriend invited me to come up with them and live with them. So I wasn't homeless anymore after that.
All right. That's good. That's a step up. Yeah.
It's a step up, right? So
Yeah.
Tom was a writer. Tom was a big movement writer. And he had started a company called the Underground Press Syndicate, UPS. And,
Wow.
at that time, there were a lot of alternative newspapers, underground
Sure.
newspapers
Right.
all
Yeah.
over the country. Well, Tom started this thing. He worked out a deal with Bell and Howell to microfilm all of the underground newspapers. And so each newspaper would get money. I mean, not a lot, but they get a little money every month from Bell and Howell for microfishing their stuff. So it made Tom quite popular. He wrote a weekly newsletter that was sort of news about what was happening with other underground newspapers. But that wasn't what Tom wanted to do. He and I had long conversations about he wanted to start a magazine about marijuana that was slick and glossy, as he put it, something that looked like Time magazine, something that was like, not an underground newspaper.
Right. Was he a big fan? Was he a big fan of marijuana? Did he smoke a lot?
Oh yeah, yeah. We smoked constantly, and in fact,
Okay.
the way that we supported ourselves was selling marijuana, small amounts. I would get like a dime bag, roll it into joints, stand in front of the Fillmore East before a Santana concert, and sell them for $1 a piece.
Yeah.
And make a little money.
Yeah.
And so we kind of worked our way up. We were buying ounces, after a while, and breaking it into nickel bags and selling it at concerts. So Tom's idea was he really wanted to start this magazine. I was more into like enjoying the adventure of selling weed, to be honest.
Yeah. You were enjoying the entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in order to finance this magazine, magazines like that are not cheap.
Oh, that's for sure.
And honestly, most magazines fold after the first year.
Yep.
Even back then, probably worse now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so Tom and I decided that we would do our best to sell enough weed to finance getting at least the first issue off the ground. So by working our way up the ladder, buying ounces, then we got to the pound level, and we would meet new people, and we would always want to meet their buyer. Then we got to the point where we were bringing it in from other states, like suitcases full of weed. Mind you, this is before there was airport security. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I mean,
so you're basically smuggling
yeah,
weed in
right,
suitcases across state lines,
correct.
kind of like a
Yeah,
spy. You're
like
like
I would.
oh you're like
Oh, oh,
006.
yeah.
Double O
Oh, oh,
Six.
Tim. I would. So here's a typical scene. I would fly to Phoenix, Arizona, and I would have $75,000 rolled up and stuffed down in my cowboy boots. And the reason I did that was because if they for some reason found you with a bunch of money, it would get you in trouble with the IRS. So I smuggled the cash in my boots. I'd go out there and meet our connection, who
Right.
would give me, 5 huge Samsonite suitcases full of weed. I get on the plane back to New York. Of course, I give them their money. Get on the plane back to New York, and Tom would have a chauffeur and a rental limo meet
Right.
me at the airport. They would
Yeah.
pick up the bags, put them in the back, and we'd go into Manhattan.
All right, so let me
Um,
stop you there. So
yeah,
every time this transaction happened,
Mm,
basically your life was in direct jeopardy because at any one point, you giving them $75,000, they could have given you nothing and
sure.
made you disappear.
Yeah. Oh,
So
sure.
you
Absolutely.
you were trusting these people that they were going to do the right thing and that this trade off was going to be amicable. So did that
Right.
ever cross your mind that holy shit I could these guys could basically take my money and I could never be seen from again?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't as worried about the people that I was buying from as I was people who they knew. Like on a couple of occasions, there was attempted um, stick ups.
Yeah,
uh,
right.
but
Wow.
but not by those people, not by the people I was dealing with, by outside people, and that would get you know
Yeah, yeah.
that would
A
get
little dicey.
Dangerous.
a little dicey.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I carried a 45 automatic with me. Again, there was no.
really. So you were
Oh
carrying
yeah,
a gun. How
sure.
did you acquire this gun, especially in New York? You couldn't have got it in New York.
I got it in New York. I mean, I didn't
You
get it at a gun shop in New York.
No, obviously not. So, but this is, and again, anybody listening, this is before screening. You could get
Yeah,
basically on a plane with a gun,
yeah,
and
that's right.
nobody said boo.
Yep,
All
that's
right.
right.
So you had some personal protection. Okay, continue.
Right. So anyway, so Tom and I continued to do this. Sometimes we'd fly out together, sometimes just him, sometimes just me. But so we were accumulating some money. Um, and by the time we got to $100,000, then it was time to finance the first issue of High Times. So while we were doing the smuggling, Tom and I were busy putting together the first issue of High Times. Now, if anybody's lucky enough to have a copy of this, they're selling on eBay for like $1,000 for some reason.
Wow. Nice.
So all of the articles in there were written by Tom, even though they all have different names. We
Right. Yeah.
basically
Right.
every single ad in the first issue of High Times, we cut them out of other things like Rolling Stone and stuck them in
That's too
there.
funny.
Oh, that's
So
great.
we
That's
had
too funny.
zero paid advertising. And best of all, the letters to the editor I wrote.
Right.
Like, so, I mean, think about it. I've always thought this is hilarious. It's the first issue of a magazine. How the hell you got letters to the editor?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
But
great.
nobody said anything about it. Nobody said jack about it.
Right.
And actually, about the advertisers, a lot of them called us and said, "Hey, great magazine. We want to advertise, in your next issue."
Really?
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Oh
awesome.
my gosh.
they were
That's
quite thrilled.
You
What
were
a great idea.
ridiculously lucky.
Oh,
Ridiculously
I know.
lucky.
We could have been sued so bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out, and it was an astonishing thing. That magazine was like Playboy in its own way. It was a marijuana version of Playboy. And we even had centerfolds of beautiful photographs of large amounts of weed.
That would get a lot of people off.
Yeah,
Yeah, if that was your
honestly,
thing. Yeah.
it was our goal.
Wow.
Okay, our goal was to expose like teenage boy in Nebraska who had never ever seen maybe more than an ounce of weed in his life to be able to be exposed to like what real honest to God weed looks like. We also had a listing in every episode, every issue that was called ODEC. So, you know, OPEC, right? The Organization of
Sure.
Petroleum.
Right.
So we had the Organization of Dope Exporting Countries.
Amazing.
And we listed the going price for various kinds of weed in various countries.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it was just flat out made up.
Oh, you made it all up?
The first issue was. But after that, we actually started getting information.
Right.
Some of our upper level connections would give us ideas about what things were going for in other countries. But but people enjoyed it, you know, and it put marijuana in a different light. It made people think about it as a legitimate thing and not some underground magazine hippie kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were no competition. There was.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you helped shoot down that reefer madness crap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we had articles in there just like that we would expose the history of marijuana in America, why it was illegal, how did that happen, you know, things like that. It helped illuminate quite a few people.
So when was this about that the first issue came?
74, I believe.
Okay.
How many issues do you think you published?
Well, I stepped out of it after the 5th year anniversary.
So one a month.
Yeah.
So at least you were in it for at least 60 wow,
issues. Yeah.
Amazing.
But once we got the thing rolling, we had to keep financing the magazine. What we did with the first issue is we had, God, how many? I think we had 10,000 printed, not that many, and we shipped them out in boxes to weed dealers that we knew around the country, and we asked them to give out a free magazine with each sale that they made.
Gotcha.
So we were getting it directly to the people, you know, who were interested.
Sure.
So we weren't making money on it, obviously. In the second issue, then we started charging for it, but still, you know, it wasn't well known. We had a real struggle getting it distributed. There were, I don't know if this is true now, but at the time there were only 2 magazine distribution companies in America. And they were run by, Vinny and these guys, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, the crooked nose guys. Yeah.
The crooked nose guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would not touch it because what they saw it as like,
it's taboo.
It was as if we were asking them to ship actual weed, you know, in their world.
Yeah, sure.
So, but they would ship Playboy and they would ship Rolling Stone. And our point was that sex, drugs, and rock and roll, we were the drugs.
Right. Right. The holy trinity. Yeah.
The holy trinity. Right. And so we talked to Hefner, went out to his place. He loved the magazine. He was totally into legalizing weed. And through his pressure and help, we got a distributor to handle high
Wow.
times.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Again,
he was really, really helpful.
fascinating.
So yeah, Playboy Mansion. Yeah, it was something.
I bet. How old were you at this by this time?
Let's see. Was I 20? No, 19, I think.
Jeez.
Yeah.
19. Wow.
19, and
Yeah.
you've met Hefner. You've got a magazine that you're putting out, a full color magazine every month,
Mm.
and you're smuggling marijuana across state lines. You're
Yeah.
carrying a gun. You're flying. Yeah, you know what I was doing at 19? Yeah, never mind. Never mind what I was doing at 19. Nothing like that. No, not even close. Not even close.
Well, it gets even better.
We can't
Um,
wait.
so, so as the magazine progressed, we hired a staff. We stopped doing it in our apartment, and we actually rented a space that we could have staff working in. Um, I didn't spend that much time at the magazine because I was I was the smuggler end, and Tom was running the magazine
Sure. Yeah.
mostly.
Well, so you still had to do the smuggling stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a couple of years.
Okay, a couple of years.
Because, yeah, like I say, magazines they don't make money.
Yeah.
So
when did it start making money? Like after the third year? Fourth?
Yeah, I think the beginning of the third year, it started paying for itself. And also, like our printer gave us $1 million credit line, which helped a lot. That was a shocking event to me. Not smuggling weed, but the day I had to sit across the desk from a printer and ask for $1 million credit line, and he said, okay.
Yeah, $1 million
Wow.
even seems like a lot now. Imagine in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
For a product that's not really conventionally obtained and or
That's
used.
right. That's right.
I mean, you really, back. I do you have any idea? Do you have any idea what the numbers were for a population that actually smoked, grass back then? What would you say it was like? What 1/8 of the population? One. Did
Yeah,
you get any?
tops.
Yeah, so 1/8 of the population was into grass, and everybody else was, drinking alcohol. And back in
Sure.
so now we're talking 70s, so people were starting to experiment with cocaine and heroin,
Yeah.
for the
Cocaine and
big
Quaaludes were the big thing in the
right,
Yeah.
70s.
Disco.
right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But slowly but surely, the popularity of weed grew. I mean, one big wall that we had to get over was the government had got it into people's heads that marijuana was equivalent to heroin. And a lot of people believe that if you smoke weed that you were going to be addicted, and it would cause brain damage and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the truth is there was zero research going on about cannabis at all at the time because it was illegal.
So no research, but all innuendo.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Scare
right.
tactics, right? And I'm assuming they did this because they couldn't make any money off it, so they were trying to just poo-poo the whole thing.
Well, and part of it is, the history of weed being illegal is a whole interesting thing. It had a lot to do with Mr. DuPont of the DuPont Chemical Company.
Really, him of all people?
So this is started World War I, and at that time, all rope was made out of hemp, right?
Okay.
And so World War I comes along. Mr. DuPont has come up with a formula for making rope out of plastic, which was a modern revolutionary thing at the time.
Okay.
But nobody, including the Navy, nobody wanted to give him a contract because they're all like, "Whoa, we got this rope; it's fine. Why would we want to change?" So he financed this campaign to, demonize marijuana, and it was used by black jazz musicians and on and on and on.
We know all that. Yeah, we know all
Right.
that. Yeah, right. Sure.
So even in the 70s, there were people who were raised, kind of believing that that weed was a kind of addictive, poison. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, but slowly but surely, this was part of Tom's, plan was to undo some of that and get people
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
wake up a little bit about it. But
Yeah.
still, we used to get phone calls. Um, Aren't you guys afraid? Aren't you afraid you're going to get busted? And I'm like, busted for what exactly? Well, you got a marijuana magazine. I'm like,
Yeah.
magazine.
It's just
It's
First Amendment.
pictures.
First
It's
Amendment.
right. It's pictures on a paper. Because in their world, we were a bunch of hippies sitting around with bales of weed off in the corner, smoking
Cheech
weed
and
all
Chong.
day.
Yeah, Cheech and Chong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
right.
they thought. And in fact, that's, we were running a magazine. You got to run a
Sure.
magazine.
Yeah.
And, Hefner told me the same thing.
Yeah.
People used to say, oh, yeah, you guys are having sex all the time. There's naked girls running around. He's like, I got a magazine to run. I don't do that.
Yeah.
And the photographs that we had taken of weed in the centerfolds and that kind of thing, we didn't do that at our office. We
Well,
would
obviously,
set
no.
that up better.
And where and
Secret.
again, where would you go to take pictures, of lots of marijuana? I mean, where would you go?
Well, to various big time dealers that we knew who had, a supply of.
And who stayed anonymous, obviously.
Oh yeah, no, they wouldn't take
Right.
pictures of them, just the
Right.
weed.
Right.
Put up a little,
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So the weed dealing thing got bigger and bigger. And so by the second year, by 75, we were smuggling weed from other countries into America.
Oh
We
boy.
were
What was your
bringing it in
who was the biggest producer for you at that point?
Bogota,
Colombia?
Colombia.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say Colombia. Yeah.
Yeah. We met two farmers in Bogota, and we were able to buy their crop before they even planted it. So that by the time it was ready, we could just come and pick it up. We also did some business in Mexico, but honestly, Mexican weed, I don't know how it is now. I haven't seen it in a long time, but at the time, it was not good. It was dry and didn't taste good, and it wasn't really good for much of anything. People,
Yeah.
the customers didn't like it.
And it put you to sleep between noon and 1:00 in the afternoon every day, didn't it?
Yeah, that actually would have been a step up for that stuff.
Yeah.
So at the
Yeah.
height of the smuggling, like how big amount now we're talking about? Now it was still suitcases or even bigger than that now.
No,
Oh,
it
no,
couldn't have
it
been
was-
suitcases.
It was tons. We
Tons.
brought
get-
it up in boats, in ships.
Oh,
Like we knew two people that had tankers that we could, if we paid them the right amount of money, we could fill up the hold with bales of weed. In those days, by the way, weed came in bales, just like a bale of hay you see in a farmer's. So they were all squished together in bales.
Huh.
So they were easy to stack and easy to hold on to. So yeah, we'd fill a hold with weed. And often what we would do is make like 3 or 4 stops along the East Coast. We'd be waiting out in international waters, and then we'd have smaller boats ready to go to run out there, take a few bales, run back to the land. So just like running a magazine, is you got to take care of business.
yeah.
Same thing with running an international smuggling thing. You got to take care of business.
Yeah.
It's not sitting around Cheech and Chonging it all day.
No.
We,
There's lots of palms to grease, right?
oh yeah, and hiring people that are going to be dependable.
And not squeal. not
squeal.
Squeal, right?
That's right. So we had to hire lots and lots of people. So yeah, Yeah, it was tons. Let me give you an example. So here's the last trip that I made, the last smuggling trip that I made. I got arrested.
Hence
And
the last one.
hence the last one.
Hence the
It's
last one.
funny. This was actually going to be my last one.
Oh, wow.
Because I had it set up so that I really didn't need to physically be there anymore. I had people that were uh, good enough lieutenants that they could run the physical aspect of it.
Got it.
Because I'll tell you what, standing out on the ocean in a rough ocean, picking up 100-pound bales and tossing them from one ship to another, it's not fun. I can't tell you how many times I almost died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so last trip, so the ship stopped, and I was in the Everglades part of Florida, and me and this guy took his boat out. We loaded it up, came back, and we had a bunch of campers, pickups with campers on the back. So every time a boat came in, we'd load up the camper and off they'd go, and they would be delivering it to whatever dealer had bought those bales. So like, I don't know, maybe the third or fourth trip, we come back, we load up. It was the last camper. So Tom was there with me. Tom and I and this guy who was one of our staff get in the camper, and we're going to drive it a few miles up, leave it at the airport where somebody was going to pick it up. We were going to get on a plane and go home. So we got a little bit stuck in the sand. The place we were doing this, by the way, is very famous for the rum runners used to use this same. There's all these little deep water canals, and it's really easy for boats to get in there and offload stuff. So we got a little bit stuck in the sand, right? So we're getting our way out of it. We just get out of it, and up comes a game warden. A game warden in his little uniform. Yeah. And then, this is where you find out that anybody can lose their head no matter what. This guy comes up to us and he's like, can I see your hunting permits? He thought we were there poaching. He thought we were illegally hunting.
Right.
So instead, Tom floors it.
Oh boy.
Tom takes off. And so now it's like a fucking episode of Cops, right?
Miami Vice.
Miami Vice.
We got 2 or 3 miles up the road, and there was a roadblock. There's a bunch of sheriffs with a roadblock. Yeah. So Tom ditches the camper into the swamp, and the three of us run out and run into the swamp. And thus began my 3-day excursion of dodging, vicious snakes, and, so many mosquitoes. I can't even express it to you. I'd be like shooing mosquitoes from my face, and there'd be like 1,000 on the back of my hand going for a ride. It was awful. I would anyway, so we were trying to figure out what to do, get up to a payphone somewhere. For your listeners, payphones are these little rectangular things.
Yeah, you better explain, Tim, what a payphone is.
Coins in it. Coins were money at the time.
Right. It used to be a dime. You used to be able to make a telephone call for a dime.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we're hiding alongside the road, trying to figure out what to do. And Tom says, okay, you guys wait here. I'm going to go up the road, try to find a payphone. If I'm not back in an hour, then assume that I'm caught. So he goes up the road, 2 hours, 3 hours goes by, nothing. So then I said to the other guy, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up the road. If I'm not back in an hour, assume I'm caught. So I get up the road a bit. There's a little bridge. So I'm crouching at the edge of this bridge. And I'm trying to think, now, am I going to go across the river, or am I going to walk across the bridge? Because, there was cops looking for us. By the way, we had helicopters and bloodhounds and the whole 9 yards. It really was like
Oh yeah, you
a
public
TV
enemy
show.
number 1, 2, and 3, weren't you?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I'm crouching here next to the bridge. Sheriff car pulls up, not 2 feet away from me.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
He gets out and he says, "What are you doing here, boy?" And I said, "Oh, I was hitchhiking and this guy gave me a ride and then he started grabbing me. I think he was one of them homosexuals. And so I just jumped out here. And if you could give me a ride into town, I'd really appreciate it." And he's like, "Oh, well, that's terrible. Come on, hop in. I'll give you a ride."
Right.
And so now I'm going, "Oh, my gentle Jesus, is this really going to happen?" So, I mean, he was really that dumb. He was really that dumb. So I'm sitting in the front seat with him. He's driving up here, mile up the road. He goes, "I just got to stop and talk to my sergeant real quick, and then I'll take you up to town." Sergeant walks around to my side, says, "Let me see your shoes, boy."
Oh boy.
Yeah. I showed him my shoes. He goes, "That's one of them."
Yeah. Wow.
So this guy was the tracker. He was in charge of the dogs. And I was wearing Adidas back in the days when there was only one Adidas, those white ones with 3 green stripes,
Okay.
So they have a very unique, sole. So walking through the mud in the swamp, right? So anyway, so now it's not so fun. They take me up to the local jail. And it was late at night. It was probably 11 or midnight. And they were very nice to me. One of the jailers said, "Are you hungry?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't eaten in 3 days."
You should have said, "Boy, do I have the munchies from all that pot that I smoked." Could you give me a bag of Doritos, please?
Honestly, one of the things about these smuggling expositions when we were moving weed back and forth and the boats and the whole 9 yards, people didn't eat very well. It was hard to supply people with food. Right. So we would buy a bunch of sticks of salami and crackers and just distribute them everywhere so there was at least something they could eat.
Sure.
Anyway, so I was starving. So the jailer's wife actually cooked me the most delicious goddamn meal I have ever had in my life.
I was just thinking the same thing, Bill. The last meal.
Yeah. I was so hungry. Jesus. Anyway, so they took me into town to Naples, which is the county seat.
Naples, Florida, sure. To be arraigned?
Yeah, to be arraigned.
To be arraigned. Okay.
Next morning, they call me up in front of a judge, and I'm sitting there, and they call my name, and I stand up, and this guy wearing a suit who I'd never seen before in my life walks up, and he goes, "I'm Tim's lawyer," and he's pleading not guilty.
So what were the charges? So I can't wait to hear who this guy is. But what did they charge him with?
The charge was possession of marijuana, 1,200 pounds.
Yikes!
Wow!
With intent to distribute.
To distribute, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I couldn't convince him that it was for personal use.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
I like to breathe in it.
A really bad backache. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I got glaucoma so bad. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So marijuana as medicine was nothing. It didn't exist in those days.
No. So who's the mystery lawyer?
So this guy was a lawyer. So it turns out that Tom, who didn't come back, actually did make it to a phone.
Aha.
But he couldn't get back until much, much later. It was maybe 4 or 5 hours after I'd been arrested. He got a ride, and then they went and picked up the other guy who was hiding out there, and he found out that I'd been arrested. So Tom and I, by the time we made a certain amount of money, we had a big chunk of money set aside for lawyers because we knew at the level we were playing, we were going to need good lawyers at some point.
Yeah. Contingency plan. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah. So this guy. So yeah, the judge says $50,000 bail, and this guy pulls his briefcase up and sets it on the counter and flips it up, and he's like, "I'd like to pay it in cash." And
Wow.
he had a briefcase full of money. So yeah, paid it in cash.
Wow.
I got my clothes. He drove me to the airport, and I got on a plane and went back to my life in New York.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So you paid your bail, but you're still beholding to Florida courts for your charge. So what was the end result of the charge?
Well, that took about a year to resolve.
Really? Wow.
And several lawyers. I had 2 really good lawyers in New York and 1 real asshole lawyer in Florida. But so, yeah, Florida agreed to let me go back to New York. That's one of the reasons the bail was so high.
Right.
My lawyer kept in touch with the DA down there regularly, so they knew that I wasn't going to run on him.
You were going to flee. Right.
By the way, one of my lawyers, maybe the best lawyer, was named Tom Kennedy. And he has passed on now, but he was a very famous lawyer because he had, what was her name? There's a famous porn star who maybe Behind the Green Door porn star.
Oh, I almost
you know what I'm talking about? So she was also the
Marilyn
baby.
Chambers?
Marilyn Chambers. She was the baby on the cover of Ivory Snow laundry soap.
Yes, she was.
So that was her. She was the model. And so he represented her. So I was his second most famous.
Yeah, sure.
He even had an autographed box of soap from her in his office.
Wow.
But here's the problem. So at the time, I don't know what the law is now in Florida, but at the time, the law was if you have less than 5 grams, which is, 3 or 4 joints, then it was 1 year in prison. If you had more than 5 grams, it was 5 to life.
Oh, boy.
And I had 1,200 pounds.
You were off the charts.
So I was off the charts, yeah. And we had run away, which they did not charge me with, but I think that was going to be a mitigating circumstance. So I was really, really afraid. And my lawyers were trying to negotiate with the DA, and he was just like, no, fuck you. He's doing 5 to life. And
they wanted to make an example. They wanted to use you as an example.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yep.
So finally, one day I was in Tom Kennedy's office. He was on the phone with the DA, and the DA said, okay, I'll give him a year. I'll let him have a year. And Tom held off on his phone and was like, you want to take it? I'm like, not really, but I also don't want to do life. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I agreed to it. So then like 3 weeks later, went down, with my girlfriend. My girlfriend at the time, by the way, if anybody knows their High Times covers, there was one cover with an Eskimo girl on it. She's wearing like a fur jacket with a hood, and she's holding a joint, and she's got like a silver tooth, which is not real. So that was my girlfriend.
Cool.
Yeah, she was Chinese American, not Eskimo, but in Tom's world, that was okay. So we flew down there, and they called my case, and my lawyer and the DA told the judge, we've agreed to a year. The judge flipped out. The judge was angry. The judge did not know about this agreement between the DA and my lawyer.
Right. Yeah, he wanted to see your blood.
Yeah, no, he was ready to get into it. Because, this is the thing my lawyer said to me again and again. What are you going to say, Tim? What's your defense? You don't even live in Florida.
Right. No, it's right. You have no
you're
defense.
cooked.
You're caught red-handed. You are at the mercy of the court at this point.
And the DA would be waving a copy of High Times at the jury.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So
they got you.
I felt lucky. Yeah, totally. So anyway, so the judge was mad, but he said, okay. The good thing is he got mad enough that he forgot to attach any probation or parole to my sentence. So when I got out after a year, I just walked. I was done.
Oh, wow.
Most people get like several years of parole.
Probation, right.
Probation, yeah. So, anyways, So,
what kind of prison was it?
So it was Cool Hand Luke.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
It was a chain gang prison. It was, they call it medium security. It was out in the middle of the Everglades. It was literally, there were no fences. And the warden was like, you want to run? Go for it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Nobody ran. I'm telling you.
No. Yeah.
This place was surrounded. Yeah, that's what I kept telling myself. I'd stand on my head for a year.
Sure enough.
So yeah, I was in there. Everybody in there was there for a year or less. Most of them were people that had like beat their wives or wrote bad checks or something like that. I was a celebrity. I got there and they're like, "Whoa, dude."
The hero. You're Paul Newman. Yeah, you're Paul Newman at this point.
and exactly, yeah. So the first day I'm there, the warden made me a trustee, and the reason he did, by the way, is because I could read and write.
Oh,
because not everybody could. Yeah. So he gave me the job of being his personal assistant. So I typed his correspondence. I cooked his breakfast in the morning. I made his coffee. I cleaned his shitter, all that kind of stuff. So,
amazing.
And there was like maybe a dozen trustees, and the rest of there's like maybe 90 or 100 guys who were on the chain gang, and they were not too happy about it. So
right.
So when I got there, the culture of the prison changed quite a bit. Visiting day was on Sunday afternoon, okay? And I had visitors every single Sunday. Either Tom flew down to see me or he would fly, my girlfriend down or somebody, friends, whatever. They kept me supplied with cigarettes, which, I don't smoke now, but I did then.
Right.
And every time when they were there, if a visitor needed to use the toilet, they would have to use the warden's toilet because there was no other, the rest of them were in the cells. So you say, I got to use a toilet. You go in there and you leave. And what my people would do is they'd have weed stuffed in a Ziploc, and they'd put it in the
tank.
Toilet tank, right? And then after visiting time is done, I go around clean, doing my evening, clean, and I throw those bags in the great big green garbage bag, and I drag it away, and I've got a hiding place. They smuggled in Valium. They smuggled in all kinds of shit, but mostly weed. So when I was there, weed was like $5 a joint, if anybody could even get it.
Wow.
I got there and I told everybody, no, weed is free now.
Oh,
weed is free. Okay.
Oh, you the most most beloved inmate ever.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, and it kept everybody very friendly. you know,
Yeah, of course.
um,
And very stoned and very hungry.
and very stoned. That's right. Yeah. Um, and,
Wow.
also I had money. Tom made sure that I had money. So we had a guy who delivered our food once a week in one of these big refrigerated trucks. And I bribed him to bring me a 6-pack of Heineken once a week. So me and the head chef could have some beers.
Yeah.
So stuff, it was okay. So, and also my other job was taking care of the warden's horses. He had 2 horses that he just never fucking used. But his idea
Yeah.
was if somebody tried to escape in the swamp, he would ride through the swamp with these horses and catch them, which never happened. But I brushed him. I took care of him. I rode him a little bit. Every Sunday morning, his bratty little kids would come out and I would take them for a ride. And yeah, most days I just hung out. After I did my chores, in his office, I would just hang out in the back with the horses and just chill. So, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't anything like the movies. Nobody got gang raped. There was no, I don't even think I remember a fist fight. I mean, there was
Yeah.
arguments,
Wow.
but
Yeah, you
I
know what?
don't.
I see you. I see you as Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption. That's what I envision you as.
Yeah, kind of
That's who
like
you
that.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who you are at this point. Yep.
So that was prison, and the day that I got out, two great things happened the day I got out. One was they offered me a job to be
Who
a
offered you a
warden,
job?
or not a warden, a guard at that prison.
Right.
And my jaw just hit the floor. I'm like, are you guys kidding? And then 3 of the other guards are like, no, we were in jail here too. And so it's like a thing with them.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, I'm good. I think
Yeah.
I'll head back to New York.
Yeah.
The
Back to
other
back to
cool thing,
civilization.
right? The
Right.
other cool thing that happened the day that I left, this guy got transferred in, and it's the usual, hey, what are you in for? What are you in for? That kind of talk. So I told this guy, my story, and he was like, when did this happen? And I told him. So he had been staying in the Naples jail for a long time. And he was in charge of the burn crew. When after my case was adjudicated, they burned my weed. And they used him.
And everyone was happy.
And no, you're not kidding. He said to me, I want you to know that was some very fine weed. You made a lot of people happy. He said every time they take a bale over to the burner, they'd reach in and just pull out a fistful and stick it in their pockets. And the wardens weren't, or the guards weren't paying any attention to him.
Yeah.
So he said, man, you got everybody high, and it was fine weed. I'm like, thank you very much. That made me feel good. At least it didn't all go to waste. I mean,
right.
You were doing a public service. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, got on the plane, early morning plane. It was like 6 a.m. Nice stewardess comes around. She says, can I get you anything? I'm like, can I have a beer? And she looked at me like, oh, is this guy going to be trouble? And I'm like, I just got out of prison. So her eyes got wide. She's like, oh, okay, here you are, sir.
Yeah. And she gave you her phone number too.
So yeah, I did a year and flew back to New York and was done with that.
Done with that, but now did this change you after, in terms of the...
Well, let's get. I tell you what, we're at an hour here. Let's take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, Tim's going to tell us some more history, and he's going to tell us about what's going on currently, and then we're going to hear how he met his lovely wife. So
All right,
so
we'll
we're going
take
to
a
take a
break.
break at this point, and we're going to
And
come back. So
yeah.
stay tuned, people.
All right, we'll take a break and we'll be right back after this. This is Bill, and you're listening to Pull Yourself to Pieces, the podcast, hosted on Anchor. You never heard of Anchor? Anchor by Spotify is a podcast host platform, and it's an easy way to make a podcast. We picked Anchor because they have everything we needed all in one place. You can record and edit a podcast from your computer or even right from your phone. Then you can have your podcast distributed easily to multiple platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and much more. And did I mention it's free? That's right. Anchor is free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you for listening to this segment of Pull Yourself to Pieces, part one of an interview with Tim the Enchanter, which was fascinating.
At best,
yes.
at least.
We're going to continue with a part two that we're going to drop on Wednesday this week. And
Wednesday, what's that date?
That'll be the 27th.
Okay, Wednesday the 27th
So
is
please
part
tune in
two
on please tune in on the 27th, Wednesday, for part two of our interview with Tim the Enchanter. We guarantee you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, we had fun, and the man, talk about a fascinating man. You'll definitely want to hear the rest of this interview.
Absolutely. All right. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Please wait for assistance.
Please check out our website, pullyourselftopieces.com.
That's right.
And you can subscribe to the show in Google and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Stitcher, and YouTube, or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode.
And if you enjoy our show, don't forget to give us a high rating.
And remember to tell your friends about the show.
Thanks for listening to our show, and thank you to freesounds.org and Gottlieb, Audio Mirage, Plastabrain, Cognito Perceptu, FK Prod, Mirage Taser, Shadow Wisp, DBoss, Viku Seru, Intra Environmental Sound Project, Julian Nicholas, Carmelo Mike, G Kill Hour, 140178 Sound, CMU Sound Design, Alan Mchi, Der Super Anton, Eric H2000, Bulbastray, FK Phantom, Ultra Dust, Ada Records, Stuart Colborn, Debroid, Cubidup, GJ, Syntax Seed, Inspector J, Astounded, Madge 061785, Just Invoke, Short Record, Lorenzo Sue, and I'm Mackenzie. CreativeCommons.org/licenses/by/3.0/legal code.